What is up, guys? This is Orca Flop, and today I'm coming at you with another video. And today I'm going to be reviewing my first IMSA race. I'm going to be reviewing. Sorry, I had to clear my throat there. I'm going to be reviewing the 2019 Bubba Burger Sports Car Grand Prix at Long Beach that happened this Saturday for IMSA. And I have so much to say in such a little time. So let's get straight into it. So GTD was not running this race to begin with. It was just the GTLM class and the DPIs. The future death class, that is the LMP2 class, wasn't here either. It was just the DPI and the GTLM cars that were here at Long Beach. And qualifying went pretty smoothly. Helio Castroneves broke a new track record at Long Beach with the number 7 Acura Team Penske DPI. And he ended up getting the pole for DPI. Felipe Nasser would start second in the Action Express number 31 Cadillac. And then for GTLM, the front row was both Porsches, as the 911 of Nick Tandy would start it off. And then the number 912 Porsche of Lawrence Vanthor would start second. And then Oliver Gavin third in the number 4 Corvette. So the starting grid was already interesting, seeing as how qualifying was very competitive. And we went green at Long Beach. Helio Castroneves led us to the green in the number 7 Acura Team Penske DPI. Wild start to begin with, as Tristan Nunez in the number 77 Mazda DPI was making a 3-wide move on Jordan Taylor, who ended up having to go to the hospital for surgery prior to this race starting. I forgot what it was for, but he ended up sticking it out and racing in that car. And so Tristan Nunez made a pass on Jordan Taylor and Pablo Montoya in the number 6 Penske car. And he made a wild move to third from that. And Felipe Nasser, meanwhile, was chasing down Helio Castroneves the first part of this race. He had the early pace. Sorry, my throat's been hurting a little bit. But Felipe Nasser had a bit of an early pace on Helio Castroneves in the opening laps. There were multiple times he could have passed him on the opening corners, but decided to stay behind and take care of his tires. And in about turn 6 or 7, things got crazy as John Bennett in the Core Autosport Nissan ended up tapping the wall a little bit and going straight into the tire barriers. And then the number 55 Mazda of Jonathan Bomarito made another 3-wide move, similar to how Tristan Nunez did going into turn 1, except he made on Jordan Taylor and ended up hitting Jordan Taylor and spinning out in turn 7 and nearly hitting Juan Pablo Montoya. And then as the GTLM cars were going by, nothing changed in GTLM early on. Nick Tandy was still the leader and nearly clobbered into Jonathan Bomarito at the start of this thing. And we ended up going caution because Jonathan Bomarito and John Bennett couldn't get going. I believe John Bennett was stuck in reverse. So that Core Autosport Nissan, the only Nissan DPI in the race, ended up DNFing because of the transmission issues after hitting that tire barrier. So it was a very sad early exit for the Core Autosport team. Jonathan Bomarito had a little bit of wing damage. They didn't repair till, well, we'll get on to later. But he ended up, moving on and continuing on since that number 55 Mazda didn't have much damage to begin with. The JDC Miller Motorsports Cadillacs were in the top 10. Tristan Vautier in the number 85 was sitting in 6th. I believe Simpson was sitting in 5th in the number 84. So they were looking very strong early on. The Hunkos Cadillac DPI with Kyle Kaiser behind the wheel was looking strong early, having a top 10 run. A lot of teams looked strong early on, especially after this first caution. I don't think we had pit stops. I don't think we did. I think everyone stayed out. We went green again, single file. Helio Castroneves once again led us to the green in that Penske DPI. And it was a 3-car battle between him, Felipe Nasser, and Tristan Nunez. So it was a Mazda, Cadillac, and Acura battle in the lead for DPI. And in turn 11, Helio Castroneves ended up missing a shift in Felipe Nasser, and Nunez whipped by as Helio Castroneves dropped down to 3rd. So that was an amazing battle for the lead in DPI. And then back in GTLM, it was a Corvette versus Porsche battle. It was Nick Tandy and Lawrence Vanthor that were battling for the lead for a little bit. Then Jan Madison and Tommy Milner were there for that 3rd spot. And then the 4GT, the number 66 4GT of Sebastian Bourdais was right behind the Corvettes, and then the BMWs were there as well in the very back, battling with Richard Westbrook. Richard Westbrook. Okay, Jesus Christ. It's it's always been hard for me to say Richard Westbrook's name. But GTLM looked fairly calm early on. It was an early battle between Porsche and Corvette, but it was a respected battle since Corvettes and Porsches have had friendly rivalries. So nothing much happened in GTLM until we'll get on to later on. It was kind of the DPI was the head honcho so far. And over the course of this part of the race, it got very peaceful. Felipe Nasser was setting the pace. That number 31 Action Express Cadillac DPI set the fastest laps of the race and was leading multiple laps with Tristan Nunez not that far back in the number 77 Mazda. At this point, I was wondering if the Mazda inline 4 was going to fail or not, because I genuinely thought it was going to happen, just seeing as how Mazda's been at the IMSA races lately. So, I figured that engine was going to blow sometime soon. But then we got another caution for, ironically, the number 55 Mazda of Jonathan Bomarito. And before this caution, Sebastian Bourdais put went into pit road in the number 664 GT. And they did a driver swap and put Dirk Muller in the car. And they pitted before the caution came out, so that means they would cycle out to the lead in the GTLM class. Also, Kyle Kaiser decided to stay out on this caution, and I forgot to mention that the caution was for Jonathan Bomarito stalling the number 55 Mazda at around turn 5, somewhere around there, or maybe it was a turn 7. It might have been turn 8, I don't know. I don't remember exactly, but I thought the engine blew, and I was like, oh, great, Mazda's having more reliability issues. Tell me what's new. But no, it was just an issue of he just stalled the car, and it couldn't get going, so they called the four-course yellow. This is where pit stops began to come into play. At this point, Wild Barbosa was in the number 5 Mustang sampling Cadillac. That's an Action Express Cadillac, but I just like to say Mustang sampling because it's an awesome-ass name. He was on the same strategy as everyone else virtually. And pit stops shook a lot of things up because now Dirk Muller is the leader of GTLM because that 4GT pitted right before the caution, so it was perfect strategy timing. So when the DPIs went to pit road, I believe Jordan Taylor got a good stop, Tristan Nunez did, and everyone was doing driver changes. The number 10 went to Renger van der Zand. The Mazda went to Harry Ticknell and Oliver Jarvis, which is good because those two are both very good wheelmen. The Penske car switched out as well. Ricky Taylor hopped in the number 7, and then the number 6 was taken over by Dane Cameron. The number 31 was then switched out with Peppo Durrani, and everyone got out pretty clean. Oliver Jarvis assumed the lead, and then Helio Castro, it was Durrani that took the lead. Here's the problem, though. This is a very big game changer in the race. The car that's been setting the pace in the DPI class ended up having a loose wheel. Yes, you heard me right. They did not tighten the wheel enough, and as soon as Durrani went over the curbs, the tire fell off of that Cadillac, and it ended up rolling to the side, and Durrani had to do basically a full lap around Long Beach without one tire in the right front. They ended up having to go into pit 2 more times to make sure that tire was tight. And they were the fastest car in DPI, and it sucked to see them lose that because they were setting the pace in that class, but at the same time there was good racing, so really sucked for Action. Oh my god, I dropped my camera. Okay, that usually never happens in race reviews, and then I zoomed in apparently. Okay, well, my bad guys, and it felt like, oh, you know what, I don't know, I don't know. Anyway, let's forget that happened, the bleep error. Anyway, But yeah, Action Express, that was just bad luck in and out of itself. That they didn't tire. I'm sure Durrani was over the radio complaining about the pit crew too, and I would be just as mad as well if they didn't, tight enough. Kyle Kaiser would then assume the lead because he pitted early along with Sebastian Bourdais in the 4GT, so he was able to stay out and try to lead some laps as much as possible. So that Juncos Racing Cadillac got to show some speed and setting the pace with the older tires. And then the GTLM cars went into pit road, and it was at around the same time as Durrani going to pit road. The 912 Porsche went to Earl Bamber. They switched out Lawrence Van Thorn for Earl Bamber. The 911 Porsche was switched out with Patrick Pilet. And then the Corvettes went from Garcia to Magnussen, and then from Gavin to Milner. So the Corvette Racing put probably one of their best prospects in the number 3 and their best prospect in the number 4. A young and a veteran driver in those Corvettes. And then with the Porsches, you have 2 really good factory drivers of Earl Bamber and Patrick Pilet. I don't exactly remember. I think Jesse Krohn hopped in the 24 BMW, and then D. Filippi hopped in the 25. But as the 4 GTs exit out before the BMWs, or the 67 did as well, at least. And as Durrani was leaving pit road, the BMWs were leaving the pit road at the same time, and they had a bit of a kerfuffle as the BMWs ended up nearly colliding with each other, and Durrani almost hit Jesse Krohn. The number 24 BMW ended up stalling on pit road. The 25 ended up going, but the number 24 ended up stalling on pit road after that collision. And it was an overall crazy event on pit road with the tire not being tight enough on the Cadillac, and then the BMWs having issues after a near collision. So that was absolutely crazy. And then we go green again, and Kyle Kaiser in the Hoon Coast Cadillac makes that thing look amazing and starts leading laps at Long Beach, setting the pace. Harry Ticknell, I believe, got the lead back, or got back on the lead lap on this restart. Tristan Vautier, something happened to him. I don't know what it was, but he ended up going like 5 laps down. He was the number 85 JDC Miller Cadillac. Will Simpson, I believe is his name, was sitting in 4th, believe it or not. So that was a good run for JDC Miller. So they were having a pretty good run with the 84, but Vautier, I don't know what happened to him. He must have had a mechanical failure or got penalized. I don't remember. But overall, this is a crazy restart because Oliver Jarvis was sitting in 2nd behind Kaiser. 3rd was Helio Castroneves, and then 4th was Jordan Taylor. And on this restart, going into turn 8, Jordan Taylor, or Renger van der Zand actually, ended up, not Helio Castroneves, by the way, Ricky Taylor. I keep thinking Castroneves because he's one of my favorite drivers in the 7. Anyway, but Renger van der Zand ended up not braking into turn 8 and slammed the wall, causing the number 10 Cadillac for Wayne Taylor Racing to have a tire failure. They ended up having to bring it in, and they ended up DNFing, and Wayne Taylor was not happy. These are your Rolex 24 winners, by the way. And I don't know if it was a brake failure or not, but Renger van der Zand took a pretty hard hit into turn 8 because there's no safer barriers there or anything. So really sucks for Wayne Taylor Racing. They were a top 5 car pretty much all day in DPI. So they were very strong. So that sucks to see that they were out. But still, though, it was Kyle Kaiser setting the pace until he ended up having to go into pit road. But one team that was on the same strategy as everyone else was the Mustang Sampling Cadillac, and they pitted at the exact same time as Kyle Kaiser when they didn't have to. Philippe Albuquerque ended up bringing that car into pit road, and they ended up doing the same pit stop Kyle Kaiser did, except we'll get onto how it worked out for them later. And because they were on the same cycle, everyone else in DPI went into pit road, and while Albuquerque ended up, I'll get onto it later. I got to talk about GTLM real quick because I think this part of the race, GTLM was at its finest. Because Dirk Muller stayed out on that restart for GTLM, it was Dirk Muller setting the pace as Earl Bamber was beginning to chase him down as those newer Michelins were starting to kick in. And that 912 Porsche was leading laps and has been fast over the course of this race. And down the front straightaway, Earl Bamber got a better exit than Muller, and they ended up beating and banging and having a great battle for the lead. Down the whole front straightaway, except Dirk Muller outbroke Earl Bamber once, but Earl Bamber ended up coming back and in turn 5 took the lead from Dirk Muller after all that beating and banging and side-by-side racing with Earl Bamber and Dirk Muller. It was fantastic racing in GTLM. It was really fun to watch. And Earl Bamber ended up taking the lead. Pilet was 3rd and Muller was 2nd. The Corvettes and both Milner, Magnussen, and Patrick Pilet. There's 2 Corvettes and 1 Porsche battling for 3rd. And Magnussen ended up getting around Patrick Pilet. So the number 3 Corvette went to 2nd, or not 2nd, 3rd. And Earl Bamber in the 912 Porsche was setting the pace, and Milner in the number 4 Corvette and Pilet in the 911 Porsche ended up having a fantastic battle for 4th, as once the DPI cars went to pit road for their green flags, I was right. Once the DPI cars ended up having to go into pit road for pit cycle, I forgot to mention as well the Harry Tingnell and number 55 Mazda. They also had to do a wing change because of the earlier incident. But the DPI cars ended up having their green flag pit stops, and this is where it got really interesting as Oliver Jarvis was now setting the pace after Kyle Kaiser pit. The Penske cars pitted a little bit earlier than usual. Ricky Taylor and Cameron went into pit about a lap before Oliver Jarvis did, and it was a really close pit exit between Jarvis and Taylor. As soon as Jarvis got out of pit road, Taylor was already braking into turn 1, and they were side by side for a little bit, but then Ricky Taylor took the lead, and then Dane Cameron went up to second against Oliver Jarvis. And then because they looked over the scoring again, believe it or not, Philippe Albuquerque in the number 5 Mustang sampling Cadillac was in the lead because he was doing the Kyle Kaiser strategy, yet he was with everyone else and was thinking about doing the same strategy. So that allowed the Mustang sampling Cadillac and Philippe Albuquerque to assume the lead. So Ricky Taylor was second, Dane Cameron was third. Meanwhile, this was going on. Milner and Pele were having a great battle for position. Milner ended up getting around Pele for fourth after a great battle there. And Magnussen and Milner were reeling in that 4GT of Dirk Muller as Earl Bamber was setting the pace. They thought Earl Bamber actually had a tire failure at first. They believed that the car had a vibration and Earl Bamber was having a tire failure, but yet it was just a rear suspension issue just going up and down. Other than that, the 912 Porsche was cruising with a 1 second lead over Dirk Muller, and it's got really eventful. So towards the last stint of the race, the number 31 Action Express Cadillac was in a battle with Jake Owen or Will Owen and the number 50 Cadillac. The Juncos Racing Cadillac ended up slamming the tire barrier in turn 7, but ended up getting going again, so there was no caution. And this is where this race got really good. Both classes, GTLM and DPI, had great racing at the end of this race. DPI, it was a battle between Philippe Albuquerque and Ricky Taylor. It was shades of the 2017 Rolex 24, except now Ricky Taylor is in a Penske car rather than a Wayne Taylor racing car. And as they caught GTLM traffic, things really got interesting because as Milner and Pele were battling for position, I forgot to mention, when Taylor was battling with Albuquerque for the lead, as he was breaking into turn 1, Milner locked up the brakes and hit the back of Ricky Taylor. All three of them nearly wrecked. The Porsche, the Corvette, and the Acura Team Penske car nearly all wrecked after Milner late braked and did some beat and banging with Ricky Taylor. And Ricky Taylor ended up getting by those GTLM cars, and Miller ended up passing Pele. So that got really good at the end there. But Ricky Taylor caught right back up to Philippe Albuquerque and ended up sending it into basically every corner. And it was just so entertaining to watch Ricky Taylor drive that thing and wheel it towards Albuquerque. But in the end, Albuquerque was setting the pace, and on the last lap of the race, the 911 Porsche was ahead of Ricky Taylor. Or it wasn't the 912 Porsche. It was the 912 Porsche, the leader in GTLM, was in front of Ricky Taylor, ended up slowing him down. He didn't have enough time to catch Philippe Albuquerque, but it was an overall very fun battle and interesting to watch for the lead because both Ricky Taylor and Philippe Albuquerque drove their butts off, and those cars were racing really hard for the win. But in the end, Philippe Albuquerque had the talent to hold off Ricky Taylor, and after an outstanding battle for the lead in DPI on the final lap, Philippe Albuquerque brings it home for Mustang Sampling, gets them their first win of the year at Long Beach. And then GTLM got wild as Earl Bamber was setting the pace and was cruising to a victory in the 912 Porsche. But meanwhile, for second, the number 66 4GT of Dirk Muller was running on a fuel strategy. They were going to run out of fuel at some point, and Jan Magnussen and Tommy Milner were catching him, and they were out braking him and everything. At one point, Magnussen nearly whooped by him on the front stretch, but got blocked by Muller. And I'm sure Magnussen didn't like that, as in the next few corners, Magnussen was like slightly tapping Muller continuously, and it was just so good And then at the end, Muller ended up running out of fuel exiting turn 7, and Magnussen ended up hitting Muller in the back and spinning him around. The number 66 Ford GT of Dirk Muller ended up crashing into the wall by spinning out. Magnussen had front damage, and I thought Miller was going to race him for second. And the two Corvettes were going to battle it out for the second spot. But no, Miller stayed right behind Jan Magnussen, and the 912 Porsche of Earl Bamber and Lawrence Vanthoor finally gets a win. And they win at Long Beach, and finally Lawrence Vanthoor and Earl Bamber get to win. So Porsche wins their second race in a row, except this time the 912 finally wins rather than the 911. So that was really awesome to see the 912 get the win at Long Beach. And then both Corvettes of Tommy Milner and Jan Magnussen, and Magnussen ended up getting second with huge front damage after hitting Dirk Muller and crashing him in the last lap. Milner ended up, finishing third, staying behind his teammate, and both Corvettes were on podium. Both Penske cars of Dane Cameron and Ricky Taylor finished second and third, and they were both on podium. The number 66 Ford GT was destroyed at the end, just sitting on the turn 7 in the backstretch. Just Muller was getting out of the car, and he was upset. Richard Westbrook, I thought, was going to go over and fight Jan Magnussen for his teammate, because it looked like he was talking to officials in anger, like, why didn't you penalize them? But it was such a dramatic ending, but it was so satisfying, and it was such a good finish. Such a good finish. So entertaining, great racing. It was so fun to watch. I couldn't have been more enthused by how that race played out. It was so good. DPI had a great bout for the lead between Ricky Taylor and Philippe Albuquerque, and then GTLM had a great finish. Very good racing for those podium spots. And then, the 912 Porsche finally wins a race over the 911 for once, and Lawrence Vanthoor gets to go to victory lane with Earl Bamber. So, geez, my face is shaded. But I'm trying to fix it because it looks so shaded. Anyway, though, oh my gosh. A lot of people were upset with Jan Magnussen on that move. They felt like he wrecked Dirk Muller on purpose. But like Lee Diffie said, Dirk Muller was on a fuel conservation. That's why he was slowing down. That Magnussen was able to reel him up. And he ended up running out of fuel at a bad time. And Magnussen ended up he already ran into the back of him. Was he just going to stay and push him? No. He kind of had to finish him off at that point if Muller can't even move. So Magnussen just ended up finishing him off. He was already going to lose. If Magnussen just stayed behind Muller, he was going to lose spots. So he kind of just had to do what he had to do there, if you think about it. But, yeah, it kind of was a douchey move to just spin him out, and I understand that. But for me, as a Corvette fan, and my friend Dade, as a Porsche fan, we both don't like the Fords. They were OP last year, and finally the Corvettes and the Porsches get to shine. So it was kind of satisfying to see the Fords get wrecked, and both the Porsches and Corvettes being in the top 3 and top 5. So that was satisfying for me, and it was very entertaining to watch that battle between Magnussen and Muller, and then in the end, Muller ended up getting wrecked by Magnussen, and it was a great finish. Very entertaining. I understand it might have been not the brightest move that Magnussen made, but in the end, I think it was just such a good finish, and I don't really feel bad for Dirk Muller because of after all the success he had last year, so it's not like, that's much of big of a change. But nonetheless, you know what I mean. It's like, oh my, okay, camera. Anyway, that's like the third time this video. But overall, I give the race, I'm not joking, I give the race a 10 out of 10. The entire race, this entire race kept me going. It was entertaining. There was great racing in both classes. There was the only cars that weren't battling were the BMWs. What does that tell you? Those were the only two cars in the race that weren't battling for a spot. Every other car in the race was battling in all the classes for one position or another. You had the Corvettes and the Fords and the Porsches. Literally, at one point in GTLM, it was a 4-car battle. It was the 2 Porsches, or a 5-car battle, 6-car, whatever. Both the Corvettes, both the Porsches, and it was a 5-car battle. And then the Ford GT of Dirk Muller. It was a 5-car battle for the lead at one point in GTLM. That is some good-ass racing. they were racing so hard down the straightaway, and then Madison, the battle with Pele. Oh my God, this race was good. That's why I had to make a review on it, because this race was so good. I had to. Like, I didn't make one for the Rolex or the Sebring because I didn't plan on making IMSA race reviews, but I might now because I'm so sorry. My face is shaded. This is terrible camera lighting, so I apologize for that. But god damn, that race was so good. Congrats on Mustang Sampling on getting their first win. It was cool to see Philippe Albuquerque drive that car to the win. That's Cadillac's third straight win this season. You know, you always wonder when Penske's ever going to win a sports car race. They won Mid-Ohio last year, but they've had some poor luck ever since then. Shout out to my friend Race Day 2011, Rob. I'm sure he was kind of disappointed that Mustang Sampling took one from Penske. Ricky Taylor, again, drove a fantastic race. Yan Madison drove a fantastic race at the end. With the battle. Oh, my God, I hate my camera. Anyway, yeah, Madison drove a fantastic race at the end with Dirk Muller. But, it might have not ended the way he wanted it to. And I think he even mentioned he didn't mean to wreck Muller, but it just happened. But it was just kind of satisfying for me being a Corvette fan because I was so annoyed by Ford's dominance last year. And so were the Porsche fans. The Porsche fans were also upset by Ford's dominance. So it was satisfying to see something bad happen to the Fords for once. And the finish was so good, and the racing was so good. Action Express, the Whelen Cadillac, that was a shame. The Mazdas didn't blow up. The inline four actually was able to prevail for at least an hour and 40 minutes. So that's one thing Mazda can take notes on, and Yost said in general. So the Mazdas actually ended up finishing the race. I believe Jarvis finished fourth, I think, in the number 77 Mazda. And then Tingnell ended up finishing nearly last if, it hadn't been for the previous DNFs. So the Mazdas ended up making it and actually finishing the fucking race. Thank God. I'm sick of the damn engine failures. We all thought that them switching from a diesel to an inline four would prevail, but according to Sebring and Daytona, from what we saw there, it didn't work. So, again, I give the race a 10 out of 10. Both my Corvettes were on podium. And it was awesome to see the 912 win for once. The 912 Porsche has been put off to the side so much by that factory Porsche team for the 911. It was nice to see the 912 finally shine and go to victory lane. So Mustang Sampling, again, drove a fantastic race. The race was amazing overall. I give it a 10 out of 10. If you haven't watched the race, I recommend you look at highlights, and you will see why IMSA Sports Car Racing is the best racing series at the moment. I think a lot of people need to watch IMSA a lot more. And IMSA is growing in popularity, don't get me wrong, but my God, this is the racing I've been asking for from NASCAR, and I've never gotten it. So, thank you guys for watching the race review. Congrats to Mustang Sampling and Porsche for winning in their respective classes. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.